She was at the gate, boarding pass in hand, Isla on her hip, and she was not looking back. That's when I understood. I had 3 minutes to undo 3 weeks of silence or lose them both forever. But let me tell you how we got there. Because this story doesn't start at an airport. It started 7 years ago with a spare key she never asked for back and a look I spent years pretending I didn't understand. Welcome to Donito's Stories. If you're returning, thank you. If you're new, you were meant to find us. Subscribe. Don't skip. Don't rush. The dramatic part is waiting for you. Now, let's begin. Her name is Layla Brooks. 34. Research scientist. The kind of woman who carries everything alone and makes it look effortless because she has been doing it so long she forgot she was allowed to ask for help. My name is Xavier, and I have been her best friend since we were 7 years old. Not the romantic kind of best friend. Not the kind in movies who figures it out in the first act. The real kind. The stubborn, complicated, deeply inconvenient kind where you know someone so completely that the idea of losing them is more terrifying than the idea of loving them. So you call it friendship. You call it friendship for 7 years and you get very, very good at believing it. She came back to Paris 6 weeks before the airport. 3 years in London for her master's. 3 years of weekly calls, video chats, I'm fine Xavier, everything is fine, while she was quietly building an entire life I knew nothing about. I had her spare key. So, 3 years and I had never considered giving it back and she had never asked me to, and if either of us had been paying attention, that single fact should have told us everything. I let myself into her apartment before she arrived. Opened the windows. Put groceries in the kitchen. Told myself I was just being practical. I was not just being practical. She pushed the door open at 6:47. Tired from the flight. A little girl balanced on her hip. The little girl's wide dark eyes moving slowly around the apartment like she was deciding whether it met her standards. Layla looked at me. Just Xavier. My name, warm and certain, like it meant something specific only in her mouth. I crossed the room and pulled her into me and she held on. For a long time she just held on. Face against my shoulder, the little girl patient and quiet between us. And I felt 3 years of distance collapse in the space of one embrace. You're home, I said into her hair. I'm home, she said. She introduced the little girl over dinner. This is my niece, Isla. Isla studied me across the table with the particular gravity of a 4-year-old making an important decision. Then she held out a piece of bread. I took it, and something settled into my chest that felt permanent and right and completely natural. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't know for weeks, was that Isla wasn't Layla's niece. She was her daughter. Born alone in London on a cold November morning while I was in Paris, calling every week, hearing I'm fine and believing it because I needed to. The father had known and disappeared. Layla had raised her alone for 3 years in a city that wasn't home, and she had done it without telling me the truth because telling me the truth meant risking the one thing she could not afford to lose. Me. She was protecting the friendship by lying inside it, and I had no idea. The weeks that followed had a rhythm that felt like it had always existed. She started at the Research Institute. I adjusted my schedule without thinking. Finishing early, meeting them at the little park near the Trocadero where Isla had claimed the fountain as personal property. Wednesday dinners. Friday movie nights with Isla inevitably asleep between us long before the credits, warm and heavy and completely at peace. It looked like friendship. It felt like something I had no clean word for. The first crack appeared on a Wednesday evening. We were washing dishes after dinner. Something so ordinary I couldn't tell you what we were talking about. She reached past me for a glass and her hand landed on my arm. She left it there. 1 second. Maybe 2. Her eyes came up to mine. Something moved through the air between us. Quick, warm, completely uninvited. I felt my pulse shift in a way that had nothing to do with friendship and everything to do with the fact that I had been lying to myself for a very long time. She picked up the glass. We kept talking. Neither of us said a word. But I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling and thought, this is how it starts. And you know better. I knew better. I kept knowing better. Right up until a Thursday evening walk along the Seine, Paris reflected in dark water below us, his arm brushing mine every few steps, neither of us moving away. He said something that made me laugh, and I turned toward him at exactly the moment he turned toward me, and our faces were suddenly very close, and he kissed me. Soft, brief, inevitable. We pulled apart, started walking again. Both of us quiet, both of us pretending, neither of us pretending even slightly well. We didn't talk about it. We slid back into our rhythm with the careful ease of two people who had agreed, without words, to leave something exactly where it landed. But the air between us had changed, carried something now, warm and aware and impossible to ignore. It arrived completely on a Tuesday evening. Isla asleep. Paris gold through the window. The careful distances of those first weeks entirely, irreversibly gone. I was telling him something about Isla's day. He was watching me more than listening. I could feel it, that particular quality of his attention, settling over me like something warm and undeniable. I laughed, head back, completely unguarded. When the laughter faded, I looked at him. The way I sometimes did when I forgot to look away first. Look away, something in me said. Layla, right now, look away. I didn't look away. He reached out slowly and moved a curl from my face. His fingers grazed my cheek and I went completely still. Not from shock, but from the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting for something without admitting they were waiting. He leaned in. His lips came close to my ear. My hand pressed against his chest without my permission, trembling, and I felt his heartbeat under my palm. Faster than it should have been. Faster than a friend's heartbeat had any right to be. Every time you look at me like that, he whispered, I forget we're supposed to be just friends. The room was very quiet. Isla breathing softly down the hall. Paris murmuring below. His heart under my palm. I turned my face toward his. And I kissed him. Not accidentally. Not briefly. Chosen. Completely, deliberately, with full knowledge of what I was doing and what it would cost. Warm and slow and deep. My hand moving from his chest to his jaw. His hands holding my face like something precious he had been afraid to touch. When we pulled apart, his forehead came to rest against mine. Both of us breathing. I forgot too, I said quietly. A long time ago. He pulled me close. And Paris burned gold around us, and Isla slept down the hall, and everything that had been building for years finally, completely, had somewhere to land. Then André burned it down. He was a colleague from the institute. Easy charm, cold calculation underneath. The kind of man who takes rejection as a strategic problem rather than an answer. He found Xavier at his usual cafe on a Monday morning. Sat down without being asked. Smiled. And told him everything. Isla isn't her niece. She's her daughter. Born alone in London. Raised alone for 3 years. She came back to Paris and introduced her own child as her niece. To everyone. Including you. He stood up. Left his coffee untouched. Walked out into the morning like a man who had done something reasonable. He had detonated something and walked away before it went off. Xavier went silent. 1 day. 3 days. A week. Texts answered briefly, carefully. The minimum that wouldn't alarm me. The park visits stopped. The Wednesday dinners stopped. The Friday movie nights stopped. And Isla asked every morning the way 4-year-olds ask things. Without guile, without softening. Where is Xavier? Mama, when is Xavier coming? Every morning. I put on a face for her and kept moving and kept pretending I didn't know exactly what was happening. But I knew. I had always known this was the risk. The reason niece came easier than daughter. The reason I had practiced that word until it felt natural. Because daughter meant explaining, and explaining meant watching his face change, and his face changing meant losing the last safe thing I had. And now I was losing him anyway. So I opened my laptop at midnight, Isla asleep in the next room, and looked up flights. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Practically. The way you do when you have already made a decision but haven't admitted it to yourself yet. I found one that left in 2 days. I booked it, and then I cried. Alone in the dark, the quiet kind that doesn't ask anything of anyone. Because I had told myself Paris would be different. I was so tired of being wrong about that. The call came from Madame Fournier on a Thursday evening. She was gentle, careful, but clear. Little Isla asks for him every day. Every single day this week. I thought someone should know. She hung up. Xavier sat with his phone in his hand. He told me later that he sat completely still for 30 seconds. Then he called a mutual friend, just to hear a voice. And the friend mentioned, casually, the way people mention things they don't realize are significant. Did you hear Layla's leaving? Booking flights. She seemed done. He stopped breathing. And then, with the particular clarity that only arrives too late and all at once, he understood exactly what he had been doing for 3 weeks. He had been proving her right. She had kept the secret because she was terrified of losing him. And his response to discovering that terror had been to disappear. To become, precisely and completely, every fear she had ever had. He grabbed his keys. He drove through Paris like the city owed him something. Her apartment was dark when he arrived. Half-packed suitcase on the bed. Isla's toys on the floor. A coffee cup on the counter, still warm. She had just left. He ran. Gate 14. Boarding. Security stopped him. A calm officer. No boarding pass, no entry. He called her phone. Rang. And rang. And rang. 1 second before voicemail. Xavier. Her voice. Quiet. Like she had been sitting with the phone in her hand, deciding. Don't get on that plane. His voice came out rough, unsteady. Please. Just come back through security. Talk to me. That is all I am asking. Silence. Long enough that he felt everything tipping. Then he saw her through the glass. Gate 14. Boarding pass in hand. Isla on her hip. She was looking at him. He pressed his hand flat against the glass. Helpless. Saying nothing and everything. She looked at his hand against the barrier between them. She looked at his face. The gate agent stepped aside. He crossed the distance in 10 steps. Stopped in front of her. Isla looked at him and her whole face changed. Lit up completely, instantly, the way only a child's face can. Xavier, she said. Just that. Warm and absolute. She reached for him with both arms. He took her without hesitation. She tucked herself against his chest, small hand curling in his shirt, face pressing into his neck. Completely at peace, in the middle of an airport, in the middle of all of this, because she was held by someone she loved, and that was enough. It had always been enough for her. Xavier looked at Layla over her head. I'm sorry, he said. She pressed her lips together. Not for finding out. His voice was low, unsteady. For what I did with it. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of disappearing. 3 weeks of proving every single fear you ever had completely right. He shook his head. You kept that secret because you were terrified of losing me. And the moment I found out, I became exactly what you were afraid of. She looked at the floor. I tried to tell you, she said softly. So many times. You were the last safe thing, Xavier. You have always been the last safe thing. And I was so afraid that the truth would change the way you looked at me that I just... She stopped. You waited. I couldn't, she said. I just couldn't. Layla. She looked up. Nothing, he said quietly, could change the way I look at you. Isla had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Warm. Small. Utterly unbothered. He stepped forward. His free hand came up to her face, careful, like she might startle, and his thumb moved slowly across her cheekbone. I have loved you, he said, since before I had a word for it. Since we were 7 years old. You are the most necessary person in my life. You and this little girl right here. His voice broke slightly on the last words. And I am not letting you get on that plane. She looked at Isla sleeping against his chest. She looked at him. And stepped forward. He met her the rest of the way. The kiss was certain. Not soft and accidental like the bridge. Not warm and wondering like the Tuesday evening. This was everything arriving at once. 3 years of distance and 3 weeks of silence and 27 years of being necessary to each other. Finally, completely, with nowhere left to hide. When they pulled apart, her forehead came to rest against his. Isla slept between them, unbothered, as if she had always known this ending was coming and had simply been waiting for them to arrive. Don't ever go quiet on me like that again, she said. Never, he said. I promise you. Never again. A long, still moment. Paris waiting outside. Take us home, she said. So he did. 6 months later, Paris gold through the window, Isla at the table with her crayons. He set a ring down between them. No speech. No grand gesture. Just the ring and her eyes finding his. Isla looked up. Pretty, she said with total authority and reached for it with both hands. Layla laughed. That laugh, unguarded and completely hers. And she was crying at the same time because sometimes things are so full there is no single expression for them. Yes, she said. Obviously yes. He slid the ring on her finger. Isla took their joined hands in both of hers. Small, warm, solemn. Holding them together like she was officiating something she had always known was coming. Maybe she had. Maybe she had always known before either of them did. That is the thing about love that never announces itself. It doesn't arrive with perfect timing or the right words said at the right moment. It arrives in Wednesday dinners and park fountains and bread offered across a table by a 4-year-old who somehow always knew. It arrives in a man who keeps your spare key for 3 years. In a woman who says I'm fine every week and means I'm still here. Right there. The whole time. Your best friend. Your safest place. Your most necessary person. Just waiting. Patiently, stubbornly. For both of you to stop calling it friendship. And finally, completely call it home. She was at the gate. Boarding pass in hand. Isla on her hip. And she was not looking back. Until she was. My beloved family, if this story touched you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and drop a comment below telling us your favorite scene and rate the story from 0 to 10. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this one. Thank you for being part of this journey.